Hello, friends. I'm Rosie Acosta, author, mindfulness teacher, and wellness coach.
And I'm Tessa Tovar, producer, co-host, and your partner in Real Talk for all things wellness and beyond.
Welcome to the Radically Well podcast. This is a space where we break down the messy, transformative moments that make us who we are. Because wellness isn't about perfection. It's about embracing the journey.
Every week, we'll tackle the topics no one talks about, but everyone needs to hear, like navigating hormones, aging, relationships, sex, and self-care.
You'll hear unfiltered stories, expert advice, and real, relatable conversations that empower you to reset your mindset, reimagine your health, and show up as your most authentic self. Whether you're here to learn, laugh, or maybe cry a little, this is your space to feel seen, supported, and inspired to live radically well.
So grab your favorite tea or, hey, maybe a glass of wine, and let's dive in.
Let's get radically well. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Radically Well podcast. You're joining us for a very special episode today. We are currently in Palmaia, House of Aya, recording a live podcast with a very special guest, somebody who I love very much and I respect very dearly as a teacher, as a philosopher, as a grounding force in the world of wellness. We have today Sah D'Simone, an author, teacher, and just an overall intentional, powerful being here with us today. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
You want me to keep going? I can.
This is so great. I'm like, yes, fluff me up, honey. It's different when you receive it from a friend. You
Is
know?
it?
Yeah, totally different. It's like nice. Like this morning when you came to class, that meant a lot.
Oh,
you know?
Sah.
Yeah.
So for those of you joining us, this is a special episode of the Radically Well podcast. As I said, we are in this beautiful space, in this beautiful location. We are currently at Wanderlust, and I had the pleasure of taking Sah's class this morning. And obviously we've known each other for many years, and I'm very aware of the method that you teach, and I've done your class before virtually, but being in person is such a different experience. So first of all, I really want us to have a conversation today around wellness, like what wellness means to you. And, you know, we can go back and forth however you want to have the conversation. But I really think that I was inspired being in your class this morning because what you do is so unique, and it's
Thank you.
and it's so special. And you know that people say that there are those things that only certain people can do, and I really feel like there's so many teachers that I know that teach ecstatic dance, right? But that's not what you do. So let's talk about it.
Okay. Well, ecstatic dance is one component of what we do.
Okay.
And essentially, our dance, our somatic dance ritual, is to get people to resensitize to the experience of being human, which is about feeling your feelings. It's about coming into the body, being in the body, not absent from the body. Oftentimes, this is not all cases, but oftentimes in the context of ecstatic dance, without the somatic backbone and understanding, your dance can be about fantasizing this or thinking about that. You could stay in movement and your mind can still be active away from the body, where you have this perhaps like neurochemical high where you feel really good. But did you release the past from the body? Did you drop off the emotional baggage of all the unfelt feelings from your past from your body? Maybe not. So in our somatic dance floor, in this collective ritual that we do, the emphasis is to meet the feelings in the body And once you meet the feelings in the body, then let them guide your movement. Let them move you to your edge and beyond. And it's in that process that you're resensitizing yourself to your humanity. You're processing the past. You're stripping away the sourness from your memories. And then you could be more here, more present, more grounded. This is kind of like the philosophy of the method. And obviously we have so much fun too, because that's really what the gig is about.
You know what? You said something really interesting this morning that was kind of striking to me, was how you say when we look at people, we can always see where the way that they flick their hair, the way that they move about, the way that they scratch their nose, the way that they move their body says a lot about them. And it says a lot about maybe what they're storing in their body. And what is the one thing that you see all the time, like not in class, but just out in the world, that you can say, okay, there's some rigidity here, or this person.
Well, that's sort of a tricky question though, because it requires a little bit more nuance. But in short, what we could always witness is the sort of high up shoulders, and as someone is walking, there's no swagger in their hips. This is a really important. That one, the high up shoulders, shoulder to the ear kind of thing, is something that requires a little bit more nuance, because people may have different kinds of things happening for them physiologically, and not only emotionally. That's then playing a role in their physiology. But the tightness in the hips, which is, through the Eastern philosophical lens, it's the drawer of emotions, where so many of us store what we haven't processed, what we haven't greeted, what we haven't loved. So I like us to think about the lack of swagger in the hips, our inability to give a little bit of like the Naomi Campbell walk, that kind of like left, right, that kind of undulation of the spine as you walk. We're so devoid of that these days. We're walking like robots, and at every couple minutes we're walking like robots, and then we, bow over to this goddess of technology that's, essentially robbing our soul and really robbing us from being here and now, and not noticing the rigidity in our bodies. So one thing that I think everyone could feel into is just, how are you walking? Does your walk communicate fluidity? Does your walk communicate grace? And these are simple little nuggets that we can all re-implement into our lives. And through that process, you're going to notice psychological rigidity coming up. And then you could just check in.
Let's talk about the psychological rigidity.
You tell me about it.
So I really find that even, for me, doing what I do, I'm a very open person. I'll try anything. I'm very like, okay, yeah, you want me to scream? Like, I'll scream. I'll whatever you want me to do, I'm gonna do, because I'm here for it. I'm here for the experience. But I do notice that the instinct is to resist.
Yeah,
that's the instinct. I'm like, oh, I don't want to do that. Right? It's like boom, and she shows up and she's like, no, I don't want to do that. And then it's like, take a breath. You're okay. You're in a safe space. You can move your body. You can shake it out. It's like, so there is that initial, what I would call rigidity of the mind, where you feel that instant block. And it happens also in meditation. It happens also in yoga. It happens also when, you're wanting to paint or you're wanting to be creative. And you and I have taught in many spaces where rigidity is prevalent, and we're not in a space like Wanderlust or Palmaia House of Aya, where people are gathering and people are open and they want to have these experiences. We teach in spaces where that's not the case. And sometimes I think that rigidity can come from maybe not feeling safe and not building that container. And that's the one thing that I said to you this morning, was that one of the reasons why I love your teachings and how you teach is because you really create a space of safety. And I feel like you can only do that from being in a lived in experience, from having had that, that tactile experience of moving feelings through the body and moving grief through the body. You know, it's like you can't teach what you don't got, right?
I mean, some people do though.
I mean, they do it all the time.
I think we are in an interesting season of life where people read one book and call themselves a meditation teacher, or go into one plant ceremony and become a shaman. And there's something interesting about this. There's an audacity, there's a fierceness,
right.
There is a boldness to it. But what I like to reflect on is, how do you feel in the presence of the teacher? Because to me, it all started, Rosie, 10 years ago. I had done a 10-day retreat in the north of India, in the Himalayas, in Dharamsala. And there was a little talk going around town that the Dalai Lama was going to be doing a private talk later, a couple of days after the retreat was over. I come out of the retreat blasted open. We had meditated on our own death for 3 days. I was on the verge of insanity for a couple times. I had never been in silence for 10 days. This person, quiet, imagine me, zipped with a German nun as the head of the monastery of the Dharma center that we're at. It was fierce. So this is when I started to like, oh wow, there's so much here that I can't talk my way out of it, that I can't entertain my way out of it. I have to feel, I have to sit, I have to, be with. But the point that I'm making here is that sitting with His Holiness the Dalai Lama 10 years ago, it was the most visceral understanding of the power of presence. He was saying brilliant things, but it wasn't about what was being said. It was about the non-verbal felt sense that I experienced by being in His presence. I look around my friends and I'm like, did something get sprayed in the air? Is there something in my water? I feel high, but not a high that I'm hovering my body. I felt so silent inside, so relaxed with all that was visiting my body. Thoughts weren't crashing in my perspective. There was an openness to it all. I felt so relaxed. And looking back, it was His Holiness the Dalai Lama's power of His presence that could, encompass a room of 300 people and help us all relax. I said, I want that power. I want to be able to have that. From coming from fashion, and wanting to come into a room and have everyone feel an edge as my previous power. I wanted people to feel jealous and envious and feel, some type of way. This is kind of like the vernacular for my old world. And then stepping into that space and exploring something so different, I was like, whoa. In a nonverbal way, you can help people relax by not saying or technically doing anything. That's a superpower that I want. So to go back to people reading a book and becoming a meditation teacher, or doing one ceremony and becoming a shaman, no shame in the game. Live your fantasy, do your thing, change your Instagram bio every 5 minutes, no problem. But how is it to be in their presence? I think that is literally the superpower that we're looking for. And to sort of circle back to what wellness is, we can talk about the inner experience of wellness, but I think the field around someone who's well is peaceful, it's relaxed, it's inspiring, it's safe.
Love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You offer this to me constantly, sitting at breakfast with you, you and your sweetie pie. Hi. It's gifting me this. You guys you're not absent from your body, and that's tactile,
Yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
It's really interesting that you say that, because obviously I've gone through a journey this year, and it's been this last year. I've been through a pretty intense journey. I went into perimenopause early. I'm postmenopausal now. And it's really interesting to see the choices that I'm making now for my wellness, and the sort of openness that I have around it now and the confidence that I have in it now, like I no longer have the fear of saying what I want and questioning things and being able to try new things, you know, and giving myself the experience of, yeah, like I want to move my body. I feel like dancing today, or I feel like walking today, or I feel like lounging like a tigress on the couch.
Yes,
with
honey.
lots of snacks. Like that's okay. And to allow myself to have that is really important, I think. I think in the world that we're in, this word wellness can also get so many, you know, can be defined in many different ways. And, you know, you start to get a lot of like, even this is what I'm saying. You say the world of wellness and we, you know, kind of do these eyes like,
I'm triggered.
Right.
Literally.
What is that? And so I want to talk about that because even in changing the name of the podcast, like now it's the Radically Well podcast. And I really want to focus on talking specifically about wellness and really having these conversations about wellness. What does that mean? And how can we start to create a path forward and learn what we need to learn for ourselves and give ourselves the space to try things on for size, but also be very aware of the sort of shitty things that are out there in the world that people are selling, the snake oil, right? Like, how do we discern? And so much of our work and teachings and what we study is about discernment. So you just said it, you're triggered by the word. Let's talk about it.
I'm triggered because wellness in the current vernacular, to me, it's very much about being happy, having it together, having money, being thin, and keep plugging in all the things, having followers, having downloads, having, you know, this ineffable, illusory goal of being well and presenting well and always producing 365, 24/7, not participating in the seasons of life that there's, you know, perhaps a couple seasons every year that you're producing. The rest of the time you're nourishing, you have your head down, and I'm not talking about the technology head down, I'm talking about your head down into your study, your practice, you know, caring for yourself in deeper and different ways. So I think the word wellness has to be redefined the same way that so many of us are redefining the word success. We have to apply the same fierce discernment to it, because my understanding of wellness these days has radically been changed by witnessing my mother's death and how she died and who was around, and her funeral was a signpost of wellness. As tragic as it was, as disorienting as my life has been because of her death, I now know what wellness can look like. Her funeral was the barometer of what I want my life to be like, what I want my end to be like. There was 150 people there, Rosie. She doesn't have a million followers that I have across Instagram and TikTok, that people will come, random people. These were 150 people who knew stories about her, who knew ways, who remembered ways that she touched their lives, that she single-handedly uplifted them, held them, cared for them. And as much as I was hovering my body, my friend Gabriel flew in from Miami to usher me around the funeral. And it was really hard to have all these people come up over and over again to share these stories. And it didn't land then because I was nearly not in my body. But as the days went by and I started to come back into my body, actually I shouldn't say days, it took me months to come back into my body, I really understood that that was a sign of wellness, you know, that her legacy was really about compassion, about love. And she wasn't some Mother Teresa kind, you know, that was like out there caring for the sick and dying in the same ways that some of us may be aspiring to care for. But she cared for people. everyone in her life received the nectar of her care, you know? So I think friendship, the quality of your friends, if you have friends who call you when they're sad, who call you when they need money, who call you when they're happy, I think that's a really important thing too. The low lows and the sort of high highs. If someone can say, "Oh my God, I got the job," or "I'm flying to this place. They are bringing me to this thing," or "I got the role," or "I got the book deal," or "I got a raise." If someone can call you about something happy in their life and you could be happy with them, that sort of Buddhist terminology of sympathetic joy. Those two, someone can call you when they're low and someone can call you when they're happy. You being a point for both, I think that's a sign of wellness. Really, really clear that your life has support, because the inevitable sickness, aging, and dying will touch all of us.
Yeah.
And who's going to drive you to chemotherapy? Who is going to sit with you as you're getting the infusion? You know, I watched my mom's treatment and it was the most heartbreaking experience. Me, my brother, and my sister would fly in from New York. At that time, I was living in New York, and then a little later in LA. And it was heartbreaking to see people sitting there. Literally, I'm not kidding, 90% of the patients sitting there with this huge soda, watching TV by themselves. The only person in the infusion center that had the warmth of other bodies there was my mother, you know? And imagine someone just picking you up and dropping you off when you're going through such a traumatic experience.
Yeah.
These are the points. These are the moments, you know? So I think that's something that we can all like check in. Are we these friends for other people? And if we don't have friends, then priority for wellness is not for you to lose weight. It's not for you to produce and do the things. Go make some friends.
Yes.
Go make some friends. Go say the word, "I need a friend." I wrote an entire book called Spiritually We about the importance of friendship for a reason, because in the American society, we are devoid of connection. And then the other barometer of wellness that I want to touch on briefly, and thank you for such a beautiful question and for elevating this. I think it's a sign of wellness from the inside out is when your emotional state matches the context of reality. More often than not, that's when you know that the work is working. You know, because oftentimes we're overreacting or underreacting to the present moment, right? Something small happens and you overreact, or something big happens and you underreact. That's not a sign of wellness. That's not a sign that you are emotionally balanced. And when you can match your inner world with your outer world more, when there's more of a consistency, I think that's a sign of wellness.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I loved Spiritually We. I really loved it. And I feel like people that are able to create community and connection and be vulnerable enough to be authentic, it really does bear fruit.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're having this conversation about, you know, dropping people off at chemo and seeing people alone. And it is heartbreaking. And I think one of the things I think about is, you know, the two people I know that have gone through that process. I guess my question would be, how do we allow people to show up for us as well? Because so often, like those specific people, for example, that have been dropped off at the chemo, that people have said, "I will go sit with you." And their response is, no, I don't want to, you know, have you sit there and go through that. Right. But in a way, like, what is the best response to that? How do we simultaneously show up for somebody, but also give them the space? You know, it's like we come from the same culture, so it's different for us. Like to me, I'm like, everybody's going to be there. Like I want my neighbors, I want everybody to show up, like come hang out, you know? I mean, I like to hermit, I like to be alone, but when I'm in my community with my family, like everybody's there.
Yeah.
Right. And so, you know, for people that don't have that, and don't grow up with that, what is a good way for people to start asking for what they need? And also for us as maybe the friend wanting to support, what do we do when the friend we're trying to support says, I'm okay?
Well, that's a really good question. And I don't technically have a prescription for it, but I'm going to try to offer something. There's something beautiful about you not robbing your friend that wants to offer support the opportunity to be uncomfortable with you.
Oof.
That I think it's like transcendental.
Yeah.
And like high. Because we are in a culture of fix, resolve, heal, done, well, happy. and it's just not the gig, you know? I think you're doing a really amazing job at sneaking in this trendy word wellness to actually talk about what it actually means. But I think start from there, like understand that when someone wants to, hopefully this friend that wants to show up for you, understands what's being required of them, which is two people being uncomfortable together.
Yeah.
And not, fidgeting their way through, fixing or robbing each other of the experience of just resting in that discomfort. So that's one. I think the other one is when the need for connection strikes in the body, it's perceived, it's processed, it's in the same way, the brain processes in the same way. I talked to a bunch of scientists for the book and I understood this language a little bit more, which was so amazing. The need for connection visits the body the same way that the need for food does. The need for sleep, the need for sunshine, the need for water. But we just don't interpret it in this way. We interpret the need for connection as a weakness. We interpret the need for connection as a go to social media. We interpret the need for connection for I'm hungry, or I should watch some porn, or I should drink some wine, or I should have a cigarette, or I should plug in your distraction. But when you actually study the physiology, psychology, and spirituality of being human, you understand that connection is a nutrient that so many of us are deficient of because we're not trained to perceive this visceral need for warmth, for eyes that look back at you with life inside of them. I think in practical terms, I know that may have sounded a little poetic, but that was not the point. I'm trying to really just land at the baseline of when the need for connection strikes, when you're sort of feeling the need to push people away. But in truth, we all want somebody there going through hardship with us, because there is some somatic therapists and trauma experts and that say that the reason why trauma sticks, it's because we don't have the warmth of another body there with us as post-trauma, because that would half the burden. That would help you to regulate yourself back into your center.
Yeah.
And I'm a firm believer of that.
Yeah, you talked about it this morning in class when we did this. I'm not going to say because people need to have the experience, but there was a process in where we were connected to another person. And it was, you said something so beautiful, like we're borrowing their nervous system, right? And so we're able to become one. And these practices in yoga, like, we do them a lot. And it's always so, again, fun to be able to be a student and to have that experience, because I'm like, oh, I need that too. Yeah. Like, I need that too. I don't have to hold space right now. Like, I am holding space in a different way, just from a human perspective. And that to me, it really does, it takes me to, like we do a lot of charity work, and I think a lot of it has to do with our upbringing and how we maybe came into this world. And when I go into the prisons to do mindfulness work, I talk about that a lot, how important it is for us to be able to build safe spaces especially in really chaotic environments where safety is not really happening. But in those moments of connection, when you're sitting across from each other, or you're sitting back to back to somebody, or you're breathing together, this idea of the borrowed nervous system, it does create this release of, oh, I don't have to hold this. And for me, I really find that in romantic relationship, obviously, like with my partner, because we live together, we're together all the time, and we're able to, without actually speaking it in articulate terms like you did, but being in that space allows us to sort of diminish the charge of daily life.
That, you named it. Beautiful. Diminish the charge of daily life. That's it. That's exactly it. We need each other. You know, I think even within the wellness space of pretending that you can do it alone, it's also a lie. You know, it's a massive lie. If you even look back at the Buddha's enlightenment, my interpretation of the story, and also having talked to incredible teachers and masters of this lineage, all of his biggest realizations happened in the context of another person, or next to a tree, you know, between two trees, or even the night of his enlightenment. It was a relational experience. It was him, Mara, and Mother Earth, you know, like when Mara, which is the personification of all that's unholy, difficult, challenging, destructive in our psyches or in the world, for the Judeo-Christian, you know, philosophies would be like the devil appeared to him and said, how dare you think that you're enlightened? And the Buddha said, by placing his hand on the ground, said, Mother Nature is my witness. And the earth shook in affirmation. So this relationality, it's something that in Western Buddhist philosophy, it's devoid. It's very much like he did it by himself. He sat under the tree, and that's what you need to do. You need to go alone and do it alone. But it's so not the truth. All of these religious myths, we have to depict them within the context that which they happen. Nature was always part of their world, you know. So it wasn't that the Buddhist path is devoid of, or it's biophobic. It's not. It's just it was so in their context that it wasn't necessary to be written in scriptures, and their relationality was so part of the Sangha. The third jewel, the community, is part of your daily prayer. So we are stripping away the actual refuge of each other, you know? So yeah, community is the cure. I think we need each other. There's no way to do this gig of being human, which is completely insane, alone. There's just no way.
Well, and there's just so, and you've talked about this before too. There is so much science about how when we live, we live in communities, we live a lot longer, than when you live alone. Your lifespan is a lot lower than it is when you are living with community, when you're living with people. One of the teachers here, Ian Finn, who is like an OG yoga teacher. I still have one of his DVDs from back in the day. Don't tell him.
A DVD.
A DVD.
Oh,
do you remember those DVDs?
Kind of.
An old DVD, a yoga DVD. And
going to Blockbuster, smoking pot and pulling up to Blockbuster, like stone out of my mind, being like, what are we doing?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
He said a Blockbuster. Are they still around? No, they're not. They've closed them.
Yeah.
Anyway, you're talking about nature, and I'm just thinking about this space, and like here being in Palmaia, House of Aya, this magical place.
Yeah.
And I was talking to Ian, and he was saying how, if there was a frequency here, right? And so the reason why we feel so good when we arrive into a space like this, surrounded by nature and people and this space, is because we tune into that frequency. And he gave the example of like, if I were to say, sing me the note in, C or whatever. It's like, maybe there's singers here, I don't know, but like, would you know what a C is?
No,
I have no idea.
Do not put me on the spot,
No,
girl.
I know.
Don't.
And
even
Tori and I
try.
don't, and we've done karaoke. We're not amazing at it, but like we'll pull up these songs on YouTube, and it'll be like, this song is in D minor, and it's like, okay, we don't, whatever, let's just sing the song, But anyway, what Ian was saying is, if I were to ask you to sing this note, you would be like, I have no idea where I'm going. But if I had like a harmonica, and if I were to blow that note, you would do your best to try and mimic that sound, right? Because then we have a perception, we have an auditory gauge of where to go. And with nature, it's in that frequency. And so the minute we enter it, we know where to go, right? So we enter into that frequency in our nervous system, our bodies. You're hearing the sound of the ocean, the palm fronds moving in the wind. You're hearing birds. You're hearing life. And so we tune into that frequency. And I'm just relating it back to what you're saying about being in community, or just being able to be with each other, and how we can do, what you said this morning is like borrow that nervous system, borrow that regulation.
Borrow that regulation. I love that. Hey.
He loves it all.
Hey.
All right. Well, I do want to be respectful of everyone's time, but I really feel like...
What's your definition of wellness? We can't end the podcast without you dropping us something.
Little thing.
Yeah.
I think my definition of wellness
because you
changed.
just feel so good.
Oh.
You feel
Say
good.
more.
That's what I said. It's what I said. Like finishing class, coming off stage, and being able to have you and your sweetie pie for breakfast, for lunch, for a hug, for a kiki, for whatever, an ocean dip. You were able to, you offer non-verbally, like what's happening in there that gifts the environment.
Yeah.
And people who come into your space, this sense of like, girl, I'm fine. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for saying that. I love when people come to my class, and I have had this experience here, and they are just like, oh my God, look at the bird. I'm literally like, oh, he wants to come in. Keep going. Keep going.
That's a sign of wellness.
I know, right? That right there.
Literally. I have a story about that off the record later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. This is extra credit.
It's not juicy in details, just so we don't take up time.
Oh, okay, great. I feel like after class, when people say to me that they felt the best compliment that I can get after a class is, I felt very nurtured. That to me is the highest. It's like, I want people to feel a deep sense of nourishment and care, and I want them to just feel relaxed and safe. That's the only thing that I can offer. And it's, to me, to be in that place, even for a short period of time, is really everything. And I think that growing up in not an environment where that was the case, obviously, is why I decided to do what I do. But also, I think now, having navigated, we went for a swim in the ocean a couple of days ago, and I said to you, I'm like, navigating hormonal changes, navigating perimenopause, menopause was the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life. And I'm like, and I grew up in East LA. Like we've seen the drive-bys, we've seen the stabbings, like we've been through it, and that to me was the absolute hardest and darkest. darkest place I've ever been, you know? And I think that navigating that and being in this place now where I feel so at ease and so connected, it's almost like I kind of went through a spring cleaning of energy and people and things and tasks. You know, you just kind of really reprioritize your life in a way that serves your highest good. You know, I know people talk about that all the time, but like you really reprioritize things that aren't going to create intensity in your life, you know, like really simplifying things and allowing yourself to just be in the space of healing. And it's crazy to think, as somebody who teaches these modalities and has practiced for many years and is still very much a student, I feel like I've still not given myself the opportunity to let myself be nourished.
Oof. Yeah.
Right? And so I think for me now, the definition of wellness is to allow for nourishment. Like really allow yourself to be and feel nourished and practice self-compassion as often as I can. Because it's so easy to practice compassion outward, right? Like, oh yeah, I can do the work and we can volunteer and your chat.
Easy for you, darling. I try to get all my students, it's a requirement in the somatic dance teacher training to do 2 hours of volunteer work. And it's a requirement for you to get certified. And, you know, we've had hundreds of people at this point coming through the training. And honey, it's like people find all kinds of difficulty.
Right.
All kinds of excuses. Just make a fucking sandwich, put a prayer over that brown paper bag, and gift it to someone on the streets. And there's always a reason why they can't do it. Do you know what I'm saying?
No, I hear you.
So It's easy for you to do that. God bless your soul and your heart and your sweetness and your generosity and your compassion. But a lot of people are so myopic, they can't look up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry to interject. we had to have the truth.
It's the truth.
Now with poverty being criminalized in California, I will not shut up about it.
No, I think it's important. And you do a really good job at talking about it. And this is part of the path too, right? To be able to speak the truth.
Well, spirituality is inherently political, so there's no way for it to not come in. I just wait for the right time. Yeah.
On that note, perfect way to end this conversation, I think.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's great. Thank you so much for just your presence, for your gifts that you've given us, for what you do in the world. I love you so much and I have so much respect for you. And I really do feel like what you're doing is changing the world and changing lives. And I'm so grateful to be in this space with you. So thank you.
The honor is all mine, Rosie. Thank you. Thank you, sweetie pie, so much. Really.
Thank you. So thank you so much. Thank you to all of you here. And all of you watching, thank you for joining us for this special episode of the Radically Well podcast here at Palmaia House of Aya. And I hope that you join us again next week. We'll be back to our regular programmed show. Thank you so much for being here. We look forward to having you back. Hey everyone, thanks for listening to the Radically Well podcast. This podcast is produced by Rosie Acosta and Tessa Tovar. Production by Sapphirus Media. Music by Monogram Sound. Please remember to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much for listening.